Welcome to the LandCo podcast, where we aim to bring value to landowners and prospective land buyers through our experiences and network. I'm your host and managing partner of LandCo, John O'Reilly. Hey guys, welcome back to the LandCo podcast. So we are back at it with Ryan and Matt tonight for episode number 2, which is February in the year-round whitetail hunter. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, Ryan's got the fancy camera. We're not exactly sure why his camera looks so much better than ours, but we'll get.
I'm the least techie of the three.
So. Yeah, we'll get to the bottom of it. So I'm going to kind of open this and then again let these guys kind of roll. But we chatted a little bit before it started, and I'll kind of paraphrase what they were saying. This should be a little simpler episode than last time because it's largely a continuation of what they were doing last month. It sounds like next month they will ramp up into some new activities. But we talked about shed hunting, stand location stuff. I know we did a little frost seeding. I know Ryan's been hitting the equipment kind of hard, getting that ready. Of course, he's got more to handle. But does that sound about right, Ryan? You been in the woods yet, looking at sheds?
Yeah, I spent a lot of hours in there walking. The nice thing about now that the snow's off, the trails are very, very pronounced. I mean, you can see them obviously when the snow's on the ground, but right now they're just mud highways. So it's kind of going hand in hand because you're looking for antlers. And while you're doing that, at least for me, I'm also scouting. And that is going hand in hand with maybe tweaking some stands that we had already talked about doing in January, which we're also doing in February. And I think, Matt, you're the same way.
Absolutely.
Do it, as you're walking, spending, hours, countless hours and miles, boots on the ground, looking for sheds and doing inventory, seeing what bucks made it, whatnot. You're able to go along and find these areas that you otherwise may not go into after, say, March or April. That's what I'm doing right now as far as the shed hunting. I'm using it in conjunction with out-of-season scouting.
Sound about the same for you, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. As Ryan said, a lot of these places where we're doing some shed hunting right now, we don't go into them, once spring hit or just after spring. If I'm going to be out looking for sheds in some of these sanctuary areas or parts of the woods that I don't normally go into, I want to have a purpose there. I'm going to be doing some scouting and seeing where the beds are at and where these deer are traveling in and out of, just to kind of know where I want to put not only some existing stands where I want to move them to, but also, some new stand locations as well.
Plus, it also gives you some better ideas. If, with technology, we're able to use, wireless cameras, that come back, on the cellular network or email network, whatnot, to where you might be able to pinpoint some really key areas to put cameras in. Now that you don't have to go in there to pull cards.
For sure.
We've also identified about a dozen of those areas that we will definitely jump on to sneak in, put a camera in, and just probably even put a solar panel on it. So we may not even go in there for at least 3 to 4 months, and still be able to see where these bucks are traveling and it's just another piece to the puzzle of trying to get on a big deer.
Right. Well, so you're getting these pictures, but haven't most of them dropped?
No, and that's the next thing I was going to say is that this year for me is odd because I've only found 5 sheds so far. This time last year, I think I was approaching close to 30 at this time last year because of the difference in our winter. We've not had the extreme cold that we had last year, and I think they call that a polar vortex, possibly. I think that's the right terminology. The 1st of February, I found some of the biggest sheds of the year, and this year
I remember that.
Both of all of the farms a lot of our bucks are still holding both sides. Now, I've heard reports from other guys that are spending a lot of time in the woods that they're starting to pick up as far as volume, as far as finding some. So this weekend, I will probably spend most of Saturday, and I know all of Sunday walking, and probably going into some of the areas that I usually wait to the very end of shed season to go into.
Right. Well, so that's since some of those are still carrying, that's good, right? Because then you can kind of track their movement a little longer. I mean, shed hunting won't be quite as good, but at least you can
Yeah, and
trail camera standpoint, you can track them, right?
yeah, and even a much larger picture, it shows that, at least for me, Matt and John, is that our deer are not stressed. The more stress you put on them, the more early they drop, in my opinion. I
Absolutely.
don't know if there's a science behind that or what. That's just my feeling, and my, all the years of me doing this. I've got 4 or 5 bucks coming up here behind my house daily. They dropped 6 weeks ago,
Right.
and these are deer that are somewhat subdivision deer that don't have regular, food plots and good bedding cover and all that stuff. And it seems to me that they must have been a lot more stressed,
Hmm.
because the deer at the farms in Fulton County are not. They're. I would say there's probably more than 50% that are still holding both sides. At least 50%.
Huh, that's crazy.
So
You guys
it's always
you still have food out there? I mean, have
Yeah.
you mowed that? Well, you've mowed some of it, but you still have food out there for them. You haven't started disking or anything yet.
No. All of our corn is gone.
Okay.
This year, just based on what I had read and researched, I left a lot more of our standing beans than I've ever left,
I remember
and
you
we
said
still
that.
have probably close to 10 to 12, maybe 15 acres of standing beans that have been virtually untouched.
Yeah. Huh.
So,
Yeah. No, I agree with Ryan. It's always the um at least how I see it, the bucks that have some sort of injury, they're obviously stressed. They always drop first. For what I've seen over the years, then it's the farms that we have where there's the least amount of food, where the highest deer density, um, where they seem to drop fairly early this year. To echo what Ryan said, a lot of our bigger deer, at least, are still holding. Um, but I am hearing reports, from what our Cuddy Link cameras, we're able to check just one and see what the rest of the cameras are showing. A lot of these bigger ones have kind of, just started to drop. There's still a few that are holding, but we'll kind of get on some boots on the ground this weekend too and check out some areas that we haven't been to yet.
Cool. So, Matt, before we launch this, you were also talking about I don't know if you're talking about moving stands or finding new stand locations. So, is that
Sure.
from what doing a little scouting on the ground, or is that trail cameras, or what's that?
It's a little bit of both. I compare this, late season of hunting through this time now through February. I compare that a lot. The deer's bedding location and their movement, I compare that a lot to early season of hunting. They bed closer to food. They don't move around as much. So definitely for some early season stand locations, I like to see what the deer where they're moving now and where their patterns of bed to food are, so that I can kind of make some adjustments for at least early October before the rut kicks up. Because once that happens, they're a totally different animal, and you kind of have to make the necessary adjustments for them.
Got it. So you're just kind of making some mental notes or mark it on like Google Map to like, hey, here's where they're moving. If we're going to move some stands, summer, early fall, here's where they're going to be.
Absolutely, I could make a giant binder full of different maps and notes that I've made on different locations of where I think this buck is at, or where that buck is at, and where this stand should be with this wind, or this moon phase or whatever. But a lot of it stays consistent. It's just little adjustments here and there depending on certain circumstances.
Yep.
the
Cool.
other thing too is that if you guys looked into my phone and looked at Onyx and or Hunt Stand, I mean, you would not believe how much data I have got on those two apps right now. Because as I'm walking, I'm always putting in, a waypoint or marking a trail. Show it because I always kind of monitor how far I walk, because you go in the tracking part of it, and it'll track where you've been and how far you've walked and all that. And as I'm doing that, I'm putting waypoints when I find an area that I'm like, oh man, I've got to get a stand here, and I can make a notation that says north wind, west wind, south wind. Oh, you know what I mean? So that I can go back and look at that and say, all right, I'm going to slip in there. I'm going to put a stand. I'm only going to hunt that on a south wind.
Absolutely. I tend to utilize. I don't know what you use for your weather app. I tend to use a Weather Underground.
Yeah.
It's something you can look at historical weather in the past too, and you can kind of, when I look at a trail cam picture, if I haven't checked it for a week or a few days, I look at the day, what the wind was doing, what the barometer was at, and I can kind of make some notes and try and get a pattern down on some of these deer so that I know when that certain weather pattern comes through again, I can get on that deer.
Nice. So you'll kind of cross reference that with trail camera pictures, just kind of see when they move and what mature bucks move. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you can go back, you see on, whatever, pick a date and go back and you can look at it and say, you know what, on this date, that buck showed up in daylight hours in the afternoon, and you can historically look at that and say, you know what, the barometer was 31.2 that day, and that deer was on his feet in daylight hours.
Yeah.
It really helps you not only to, try and capitalize on a deer with the right conditions, but it also kind of helps you to know when not to waste your time on the wrong conditions.
Right. That's probably more important than anything. I always tell every time we'll get in the duck blind and it's like an east wind, and I always tell myself every time I show up and it's east wind, I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing this, man. It sucks every single time, and it always does. So it's like deer hunting. When I used to deer hunt, it used to be the same thing, man. So when you guys get your data, send it to me on the east wind. Send it all to me. And my bet is that no deer move ever on the east wind.
I don't know. Sometimes that we don't get east winds too often. In Illinois, I think that
I
east wind
know.
is kind of a rarity, and sometimes those certain weather patterns that bring about an east wind get those deer on their feet for some reason. I don't know if Ryan, if you've had similar circumstances, but it's been that way for us.
I killed a 188 on an east wind.
Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
don't believe either of you. I need the data because fishing sucks, waterfowl hunting sucks, it all sucks. If it's the east wind, to stay home. But we can move on. That's my personal.
The other thing too that's extremely helpful is if you go in and use Drury's Mark and Terry's app, DeerCast, you can gain so much knowledge with using their app versus in conjunction with, say, Weather Underground or WeatherBug, and start putting the pieces to this great big puzzle. It makes things a lot more clear when you start using all the tools that, I don't know how guys killed big deer 15, 20 years ago with the technology we've got right now.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of tools that we can use right now. So
Cool. So you guys are compounding data, looking at the trail camera pictures. Ryan, I know you're into equipment right now, making sure everything's ready, and we are too at the farm at Double Cluck for a bunch of stuff. But and I understand that you plant more than most, but to a lesser degree, everyone's got to do that. So what do you? You're just making sure your planter's in order, your disc is in order, all that stuff.
yeah, we're going through and we replaced a bunch of wear parts on our planters. We've got the big 16 row planter, plus I've got the little 4 row for smaller stuff, our little plots and whatnot. And we've went the last week and a half, at least week and a half, we've been going through and replacing all the wear parts. It's just general maintenance is all it is. And then same with the disc and soil finisher and the tiller, all that stuff, just getting everything ready, because once this weather breaks, you know how it's going to be.
Yeah, I'll take this for this one chance to say this again, because if you have your own farm, own equipment, that's awesome. Get your stuff in shape. But if you don't, and you're uncertain if you're going to have the time to do it, call Ryan or I or Matt now, or whoever else you use to do this. Call it now. Call them now, because we can, Ryan. We can schedule people in now, right? I mean, if we get a month or 2 months heads up, cool, no big deal. If you give us a week heads up, usually the answer is no. So while Ryan is getting equipment ready, I think equally important is if the equipment you find that do it now. Don't now, you're going to end up using someone that can just do it because they have the time, and those people typically don't have the quality stuff that you need for the plots that you want. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like a short kind of a plug, kind of not, but that's true. If you're using somebody else,
the other thing too is going on with exactly what you just said is is the planning part of it. I've been meeting with my seed and fertilizer, my agronomist, and getting everything laid out so that, when the time's right, I'm not sitting there waiting for, my food plot beans or my, sunflowers for the dove fields. All that stuff's already done. It's ordered. And if it's not there already, it'll be there in the next week to 10 days probably, to where when it's there, I've got my hands on it.
Right. We've been in that situation. It's being behind in terms of like having your seed is the worst. So that's a good point as well. What else? What are we missing? I know, Ryan, we have been doing some frost seeding. I don't know if, Matt, you've done any of that out at your places, but certainly if you're going to frost seed, the time is now, right?
Yeah, we're probably getting really close to the tail end of it. Been frost seeding some clover, and I've never frost seeded alfalfa, but I tried some to see how it turns out. Just it was a new planting. As alfalfa, it puts off a toxin to where you can't interseed it, but it was it's less than 12 months old, and so from what the research I've done, you're able to do that. So we're going to see how that works. But just finished up frost seeding some switchgrass and frost seeding some ladino clover.
Okay, nice. What am I missing?
I mean,
still do some
one
hinge
thing I
cutting.
can think of. Yeah, hinge cutting. That's I think we mentioned on the last podcast we did this. I had a couple of deer that we were watching that have showed up recently. These are deer we get pictures of every year, but it's always at odd times during the season or it's after the season. We're going through and looking at different areas on our property that we can, drop a few trees, create some bedding areas to bring them closer to us, rather than being so far away that we can maybe draw them in and have a chance at them early or late season, as opposed to them coming after the food is gone where they feel safe currently.
Yep. Ryan, you starting to do any of that?
Yeah, we're pretty much done now. One thing we are doing is, or will be doing here very shortly, is creating some more access trails that, at some point in time during the year, I just get so busy we don't get to it. And this is the time of year that we try to, if we want to try to get into an area undetected or without any restrictions, I'll go in there with the Bobcat and clear a trail back to a certain area. And this is the time we do it because of there isn't any foliage in the timber right now. Nothing is budding out, nothing is leafing out quite yet to where that's a great time to do that. So we're going to be, we've started a little bit of it, but we're going to try to wrap that up in the next week or two to finish that up.
Nice. This kind of reminded me of that. Again, we do the same thing with waterfowl hunting with Jody Graff. I know one of the things that I'm talking about is like today I was out shooting elevations because we're trying to plan on that side any development projects we have. We're going to try to plan it now, so when it's time to do it, all we have to do is go. We don't have to do any thinking or planning. Is that the case in the whitetail world as well? Like, are you guys planning any new food plots or what you have to do to prep those, or any dozer work for that sort of stuff? Is that happening now as well?
Yeah, we've got an area on one farm that I'd like to clear is about 4 acres, and it's an isolated area that if we were able to, we've got some trees that need to be pushed out with the dozer, and probably the backhoe as well. Dig them out, clear out this area, get it prepped now, so we're not going to be able to do anything as far as planting for spring. It's going to be a green plot, and what we're planning on now is putting in a blend of radishes, turnips, and that sort of a mixture in mid to late August, and then next year go in and maybe plant beans in the spring or something like that. But we're going to try to get all that taken care of, the excavating part of it in the spring, and then get it all ready to go for a late food plot in August.
Right, for sure. Well, it's good to plan all that stuff now, because a lot of that stuff, we have a bunch of equipment. Once it gets really big, it's kind of outside of our what we can handle. But it's important to get a grasp on how many days you think that'll take and get those guys on the books now, because if you don't do that, similar to us in planting, they're long gone. Now you're looking at next year. What are we missing? Anything else?
I mean, one thing I can think of, I mean, it's related to whitetail, but just in general, I mean, if there is anybody interested right now, in having a new place to hunt, they're maybe looking to pick up a lease, or they're looking to pick up a piece of property to own before this hunting season comes up. Now is the time to really get out there and take a tour of these places if you have any interest whatsoever, because you're going to get a better view and a better idea of the deer movement, the deer, where they're traveling, what the property looks like during this time, as opposed to when it gets spring and things green up. It gets a lot harder to, kind of tell what the layout of a property is like and where the deer are moving through there.
Gotcha. Well, cool. Yeah, well, I've shown several properties in July and August, and not only can you not tell much, it's also miserable. So, is that it? We're going into next month. Are you guys planning burning? I mean, is that I know, Peter, how much you love burning, but are you planning that out now?
Yeah, we're planning on probably starting, depending on weather and conditions. But next week we're going to start burning. I got a lot of acres to burn, so we're going to start next week, because weather permitting, and as long as there isn't too much snow or anything like that, we'll be rocking and rolling on the burning.
Well, we'll expect some good reports next month then on how many fire departments you got called.
We'll get some video footage of this year of some of the burnings. It can get pretty interesting.
Yeah, but it's also cool. You guys will find some sheds, right? I mean, that's always part of it. That's the best part. The worst part is that you burn, your neighbor's farm down. The best part is you find more sheds.
Yeah.
But so part of it, I assume, is making sure you're ready for that, because I do, Ryan and I have burnt hundreds and hundreds and probably
thousands of acres.
And if I know anything, I try to distance myself from that, probably even more than Ryan. But I do remember that, you have to be ready now. And my guess is Ryan has all this party ready, because when you get the perfect day, you just go, because there's not many perfect days for each individual plot, like perfect wind, low wind, all that stuff. So
high humidity. Some of the best times to burn, believe it or not, is at night, because the winds are pretty much laid down or non-existent most of the time at night. Humidity might be a little bit higher in the evenings, but we primarily do most of our burning during the day. But you just got to be safe and make sure you got fire breaks and are back burning and all that, and everything will be fine.
You say that.
His last words.
It usually is. Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Well, like we said, this one would probably be short. Next month there'll be more. We're gonna get ramped up. Probably start working some fields. Hopefully, burning some fields, all that stuff. So, I think that's it. Unless you guys have anything else to add that I missed.
That's about the gist of it for me.
I think we covered February pretty well.
Good. Okay. Well, cool. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. That will wrap it up for the second episode of the year-round whitetail hunter, and we will be back at you about a month from now with the third episode and what these guys do in March. Thanks for listening.